So, do you, with all the history of the True Life Adventures and the Disneynature these days, do you feel that is there more to explore? What do you think would be a great focal point here in the future for Disneynature?
Well, I can't speak for the label or anything else. I can just speak personally. One of the things that Walt Disney did was explore things beyond just animals. For example, nature as it exists in space, nature as it exists with dinosaurs, nature as it exists in the microscopic level, or with just any kind of aspect of nature. And I think that's something that would be really great to look at in the future. Things like weather, even. Remember that crazy weather film? Yeah, underwater. There's a whole coral reef films to be done. We did oceans, which is amazing. But I think if you look at nature with a capital N and all of the things that takes in, it could be great. Like I would love to do a space film.
Oh, wouldn't that be amazing?
I'd love to do that. Anyway, so I think that's kind of the uncharted territory in nature.
Mhm.
In the archives, how far back does the research go on when the nature films actually began? I mean, I've heard the stories about the True Life Adventures, but I know there's a little bit more to the backstory.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. We have several file cabinets full of material, and I realized that people hadn't really delved into it much. When I went to do the research for this presentation, I had such a plethora of things to choose from. I had to leave out so many amazing stories. And so going through them, I realized they were kind of in a jumble, and it looked like no one had gone through them and organized them, and which is what we do when we have a collection. And I think that they haven't been looked at in a very long time. And so there were letters in there to the publicity people, letters from in the field, from Lois Chrysler and Elma Malott were sending regular letters whenever they could get a letter out from the field to Walt and to the publicity people. So there's all kinds of amazing stuff in there that just hasn't been shared before.
What time frame does that go back to?
Back to the 40s, the late 40s. In 1946 is when Walt sent the Malotts out to do what became Seal Island, to film in Alaska. And so there's material from the late 40s up through the early 60s when they stopped doing the True Life Adventure series. But yeah, there's a lot of material in there, and it's a kind of a gold mine that I haven't really had an opportunity to delve into, because I pulled what I needed for this particular presentation, but there's so much material that needs to be mined. So I'm hoping to do that soon.
Becky spoke yesterday about how the past has influenced the present and the projects moving forward. I'm curious, in concern to the nature films, what particular elements were you determined to preserve from True Life Adventures and carry forward into the nature films of today, and which elements did you feel needed to be changed or evolved?
Well, the central element story, always. In fact, to the point where these are not nature documentaries as much as they are stories told with nature. And that's something that Walt Disney always centered on, whether it was a nature film or animation or a theme park. So to look at the Disneynature films, I think the very first thing we did when we started that brand and that label with Earth and Oceans and some of those films was to say, what stories can we tell? And those stories based on interesting characters in the animal kingdom. So that hasn't changed at all. I think what has changed probably is the technique and the kind of rules of the game. It was acceptable, I think, in the 40s and 50s to set up a scene on a tabletop and film it, or to set up something where you maybe put honey on the camera lens so that the hummingbirds would come to the camera lens. We don't do that anymore. Maybe some people do, but the ethics and aesthetic that Disneynature uses to approach its subject matter is pretty great, and part of that is bringing people like Jane Goodall to the table to consult. And so when we're making the films, we're telling a story, but we're also saying,
Accurate.
yeah, help us not to screw up. So to say to Jane Goodall, come and watch our movie and make sure we're telling it accurately, scientifically, treating the animals incredibly naturally in their own habitat, and then shooting with the best quality and the best new cameras, lenses, and technology that we possibly have.
Even back in Walt's time, in the original True Life Adventures, they always went for the most expert people they could get. So a lot of those guys were, wilderness guides, professional cameramen, cinematographers, but many of them were actually ornithologists, scientists, etymologists. So they really were the experts in their field back then, and I think we're still doing that today, and it shows.
On every movie, yeah.
Now, you showcased in the panel itself a really fun story about the ducks on the ice and throwing the ducks. Have you come across any of your favorite stories from the making of those true life adventures, or even some stories from more recent nature films?
Most of the story, I mean, the funny stories, of course, are the ones where they're hiding under the buffalo hides and things like that. That was kind of fun. Yeah, there are some amusing stories. Most of the stories that we get, though, are danger and adventure. You know, a grizzly bear and her 3 cubs showed up suddenly, and all I had in my hand was a lens cap. You know, it was just kind of like, oh. And so there's a lot of that kind of thing, and that's one of the things that I want to go through the files and find those letters, and you know, a lot of it is in Joe Reddy's handwriting, and he was a publicist and he had the worst handwriting in the world, and I'm trying to just figure out and it's almost like hieroglyphics, but I want to go through and find those stories, and I would like to do something with them. I think it'd be fun, really fun.
You know, we showed the clip of Roy Disney talking about Walt sort of directing the scene he wanted to see without saying as such. At what point in the process in the modern filmmaking for Disneynature, for example, does the story arc that ultimately ends up on screen get decided upon?
We start with a script, and in the nature films, it's less of a script, more of a 10 or 15 page outline. And then you send these amazing cameramen and women out in the field to film and hope that they get 70 or 80% of that script. You can't touch the animals, you can't manipulate the animals. We work on the story with the behaviorists who are the scientists that are studying those animals. So you go out and hope you get it. On a movie like Chimpanzee, the star of our show, the mother of Oscar, this little chimp, disappeared and was probably eaten by a cougar one night, or panther, in the forest. So you never know, and you have to kind of go with the story then. So nature tells the story.
And what happened was amazing.
Yeah, what happened in the end was amazing, because Oscar got, which Jane Goodall even said she had never seen, and it had never been filmed before, got adopted by an alpha male, because the males don't care. There are sometimes baby chimps that are abandoned or adopted by the females, but a lot of times that doesn't even happen, because it takes food, it takes nourishment and care and that kind of thing. So the accidentals are really where the fun is, and so the stories of making these films, of trying to catch a snow leopard, who are the most elusive animal on the planet, or trying to catch a certain scene of crab migrations underwater in a coral reef for oceans or whatever. Those are the things where you just have to hope you're in the right place at the right time.
Now, talking about how not to have the script interfere with actual nature in itself, an interesting predicament was brought up in the panels earlier about when there's an animal that's maybe suffering or needs help. Do you intervene in order to help the animal? Do you change the script? Do you interfere with nature? How do you guys go about dealing with a situation like that?
Well, the ethics of it in, say, like Derek and Beverly Joubert, who are the foremost experts on lions, they were our consultants on Lion King. If they were to see an animal down and sick or attacked or something like that, you let nature happen. That's the rules. Because it may be sad to us as humans to see an animal suffering, and it is sad. But that animal might be nourishment and food for another animal. That animal might supply something in the food chain that we don't understand years down the line. So you have to trust in the wisdom of nature to take care of herself,
Right.
And not intervene. And it's hard, because your heart goes out to these animals all the time. So unless it's unusual circumstances, I think you let nature be itself, and you try to document it and stay out of the way.
Al made a different decision, but I think it had to do with knowing that the animal was going to be put down.
That is,
He said, "Let me try this first."
Yeah, there's circumstances, certainly.
Yeah, but even Alma said that they usually would not do something like that they would back off and just let it happen.